Good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Good, good. Your thoughts on the discussion today? It's a bit uh, more civil back and forth. Everyone on the panel they've spoken before, but
Yeah,
yeah, your thoughts on what you've heard so far?
well, I had some time to reflect. I was surprised by the way, the power of these spaces. Having just been in the Las Vegas sphere and seeing the a mass of people that's probably the size of a typical Mario space is very dramatic. And the number of people, friends of mine, Muslims, Jews, Christians, who've been listening to these spaces, I've just gotten a big lesson in how powerful what we say here is. Sometimes it just feels like we're speaking among a small group of people, but this is really enormous and very, very powerful worldwide. I was really upset. The last time I came on, it's been a long time since I've been in one of your spaces. We've discussed many contentious issues all over the world, including things like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and I've realized something that was, really eating at my soul from our last discussion. The language that many of us have extended to try to live with a two-state solution in peace is something that many of us, particularly on the Jewish side, are coming to regret. And as we try to be even-handed, and as we try to talk about the history and brutality that has been meted out in various ways, um, it became clear to me that many of my best impulses, the things that I'm most proud of as a human being, caring about, um, an opposition and the lives of their children and what circumstances they live in, et cetera, have now become weaponized against me. If you look at it, I did not really understand the extent to which the Arab Twitter propaganda machine and the internet machine causes pain to anyone who speaks up, even against atrocities. And I'm starting to put this pieces together, and maybe I'm just slow to wake up. But when we talk about Hamas fighters, legitimizes the action of terrorists. When we talk about occupying powers, it is to settle a dispute on disputed lands. Some of the land is not, Gaza is not something that has a particular hold in the Jewish or Israeli history. But clearly, Judea and Samaria are. I don't use Judea and Samaria, but if you pushed me enough, um, you could cause me to do that by making me regret every concern I've held for Arab people, the sanctity of life, the brotherhood of man, et cetera, et cetera. And I just want to say that having my life turn into some sort of a mini living hell for trying to be even-handed, trying to talk about problems. Many of us have not supported the settlement policy. We have been upset with Netanyahu, and to hear that, for example, nobody claims that from the river to the sea means anything about the eradication of the state of Israel is just, quite frankly, preposterous. And it's extremely important that we realize that the language that has been extended towards a two-state solution, which seems to have been scuttled, is now coming back to bite us in the ass, where we have a situation in which there's clear evil amidst a very long and protracted situation with all sorts of problems on all sides. And many Jews worldwide are saying, "Is my life so is worth so little? Is anti-Semitism still so powerful that I can sit in a public space like this and have people deny to my face uh, the terror that has been visited upon Jews on October 7th in an unprovoked incident amidst a much larger context where many of us were trying to be even-handed about the context and finding that even-handedness has been weaponized against us through the language that we've tried to extend to make sure that neither Jews nor Arabs are so humiliated, so um, destroyed as peoples, given all the horrors both groups have been through, so that there would be a lasting peace. And I'm just finding that while many of us are divided about Israel, we're divided about Netanyahu, we're divided about how Gaza is administered, whether water and power should be extended, whether Hamas should be pushed to admit whether or not there are tunnels under hospitals, et cetera, et cetera. Many of us are just now finding that The reason that the right in Israel and the right of Jewish thought sounds the way it does is that extension of language in hope ends up causing us to regret the fact that we chose to try to be even-handed to begin with. And I just want to say, Mario, that, as you and I have met in person, and I have a good deal of trust with you, and I've been very satisfied whenever I've talked to you on private channels, that this conversation from before, the last one we had, is of a completely different nature and character. And I want to be very clear, because I think I screwed up the last time I was here. I did not really understand how hard line the Arab denial of Jewish vulnerability and the sanctity of Jewish life. I mean, we've been in a situation in which we've been through something that shouldn't be, yes, we all condemn it, but you have to understand. And actually, you don't have to understand, and the context isn't that important. What we saw on October 7th was monstrous. And somebody will immediately say, yes, but you don't know, and you don't know that this group of Jews celebrated this attack. Okay, fine. It's not the point. The point is that the extension of dignity and concern by Jews for Arabs has been weaponized against us by many of the elements that were in the space the last time I spoke. And it took me a long time to just sort of work through it and realize that the propaganda machine on social media that befalls anyone who attempts to simply say what's true about the monstrous nature of the attack, the truly monstrous nature of the attack, is why people are afraid to stand up for normal, what we would hope would be universal values of the sanctity of life. And I'm almost embarrassed with myself for allowing what I consider to be my own better instincts and my willingness to use language in hope. I'm upset with myself, and I'm starting to understand why the right, which I've always opposed, has found themselves speaking in these simplistic terms, which I often find offensive and to be detrimental to the future of peace in the region. And I think that many of the Jews in this space will find that any attempt to use the language that the talking, if you talk about occupied territories or the Palestinian people, you can look up on Google Ngrams. The concept of Israelis or the Palestinian people are entirely new, because you can search the corpus of the English, all books printed in English. We've extended many terms, many concepts that are now causing us misery. And I think that I caution my Arab cousins and friends that the relentless use of the social media machine that has been installed to defend the cause of Arabs, which is a cause that I very much understand, is going to be that many of the Jews are going to be pushed very far right if people cannot say very simple and clear statements like from the river to the sea is completely incompatible with anything like a two-state solution. And playing games with these things and claiming that no one in Gaza wants to see a genocide against the Jews or things like this are preposterous. And Mario, I wanted to say one thing, a note of appreciation. I didn't want to do what you did in the last session. I didn't want to read the Hamas charter because, again, it was a hope that for peace, we have to recognize that we can't keep inflaming things. And I really appreciate, and I just want to say this, that when I extended silence on that point, you extended a willingness to bring that into the discussion. That impulse is exactly why I've adopted the language I have over the years. And when we don't find it on the other side, we begin to lose hope, and you keep creating a pull to the Israeli and Jewish right. And it's very important to recognize that that is incredibly destructive in the long run. And this discussion about what is a pariah state and whether Israel is, targeting hospitals or trying to murder Arab children is just ridiculous. And it's offensive. And I don't want to come back into a space that's going to continue to tolerate that when the best impulses of the groups that you bring in here is for everyone to bring balance and for everyone to bring some responsibility. The concept that there is no responsibility on the Arab side is something that is found in the space, and it's really just morally offensive, not to me as a Jew, but to me as a human. Thanks.
I do want to
Can I
go.
ask?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
not the
So no,
bigger?
guys, please. So I do want to go. I appreciate everyone not interrupting, especially Faraz and Ahmed. You, Ahmed, I know is usually hard for you, so I appreciate it. Faraz, I'd love you to respond. I know Eric made a lot of great points. He made them very eloquently. I'd love you to respond and disagree with. I know there's certain points you disagree with based on the emojis, and I would love
Yeah,
a good back and
And then
forth.
I would like to respond and disagree as well.
yeah, a lot of points that I want to disagree with. First of all, the notion of like being a Palestinian or Palestine is a relatively new concept. Is again, that's not true. It's a fallacy. Palestine has a 4,000-year-old history. We have a continuous presence in this land for the last 4,000 years. If anyone wants to look that up and actually read the literature on that, I think it's very interesting to understand that. The second thing is that uh, I don't think we, I don't know if Palestinians or even Arabs have a, like, let's say an uh, maybe you could claim that, but if they have an aversion to believing or feeling like the Jews are kind of victims, of the Arab world, but that's because Jews were typically the victims of the Nazis in Germany, and that's what forced them to kind of get more hardline and feel like they wanted to create their own state. But whose state did that come at the expense of? People like me, Palestinians, my family, all four of my grandparents lost their homes. Everything that you were talking about, the pogrom that happened on October 7th, that's not even a tenth of what the Zionist militias did before the formation of Israel with the nearly 1 million Palestinians in 1948 and then again in 1967 in the West Bank and Gaza. So there is a history of that. I think the fact that, posing it as like were victims and all of that, you carried that with you, that trauma with you from Germany, but we didn't cause that trauma. We're actually secondary victims of that trauma. So we're who bore a lot of the brunt of that type of trauma and that type of fear of another Holocaust happening to or being done to the Jewish population. So I think then when if you take the kind of history of what Palestinians have been experiencing, and even Arabs at large, in terms of under the Israeli state for the last 75 years. And it's been doing it basically with impunity as well, because it has the backing of the superpowers, the U.S. and then the U.K. and Europe. Um, uh, it's hard for us to, you're basically asking us to sympathize with our occupiers and our dispossessors. So I think that's a big claim to ever ask any Palestinian to sympathize with the state of Israel or the plight of the state of Israel. The state of Israel was built at my expense, my family's expense. We're the ones who paid the price for that. That doesn't mean you didn't have also civilians that died or also your victims, and you also have people that have suffered 100%. But overwhelmingly, we didn't ask for this to happen. We were living as Palestinians in our land under British colonial rule. All other countries and states who were under British colonial rule ended up gaining independence, except Palestine. We got basically, because again, the US and
Okay,
UK.
can I ask what
What?
state was there
No, no,
before
you,
I
Palestine?
think
no, no, no,
there's
Yehuda. So we're just not going to interrupt at this point. I'd like to give Firas the opportunity to finish, then I would like to engage with Mr. Weinstein very briefly. Firas, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, please, because I just want to get this point clear, because I'm giving you like a preview into the Palestinian mentality of why if you expect any like sympathy from us, of course I feel sympathetic to any civilian whose lives are killed, but because again, on the other side, we're the ones who are facing dispossession, occupation, and you know constant attempts at just wiping Palestine off the map. When you say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, the reason that's gaining traction, Eric, is because it's been pretty clear that the Israelis are trying to wipe Palestine off the map from the Israeli policy. So Israeli government policy does not recognize the Palestinians as a state, has continued to ethnically cleanse us, has continued to dispossess our homes, kill us, keep us under an apartheid regime for decades, with and then turning even more far right in the process, and doing it with impunity. We don't need anyone to teach us to hate the Israeli occupation. Our lives make us hate the Israeli occupation. It's because it's suffocating us every day. There's not a single family, and this can't be said for the Israelis, there's not a single family in a Palestinian family who has not suffered someone who's been killed by the Israelis. That's a fact. You can't
So
find a single family that has not had someone who has been killed by the Israelis. And the thing that I would end with is, if if you have a problem with hearing Palestine will be free from the river to the sea, then honestly, again, I know this is what you're saying in terms of like it's not a proper argument because it's not sympathetic to us. Is that if you're trying to wipe us out, then, and the Israeli government, I'm not trying saying you particularly, if Israeli government is literally saying, no, you're not going to get a state, you're going to keep living like this, and we're going to keep dispossessing you and pushing you out, and if you kill you if you resist, then you know what? No, they don't want the two-state solution. The Israeli government doesn't want it. So I want my land back. I want my grandparents' house in Yafa, and I want both of my grandparents' house in Safad back. Since you want to wipe me out, then the response is going to be, I'm going to turn more
Can
hard right
someone else
because I
respond?
react to the
Yuda,
Israeli
please
occupation.
don't interject, Yuda. Fearless, if you're finished,
I'm done. It's like a few words left because
sure.
I, as a Palestinian, will only react to what I'm receiving under the Israeli occupation. When I get the sentiment of we're gonna keep, hitting you with a hammer, of course I'm gonna say this is gonna make me more hard right. There's human basic psychology.
Yeah, I normally
Go
rage
ahead,
So
quit
no,
Shadi.
when I'm done.
Yuda,
No,
no.
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done. If you're not gonna let me speak, I'm.
Well, you can wait. So, Mr. Weinstein, listen, I've actually paid attention to your career and your postings for a while. You're somebody who I absolutely respect. I'll be very brief. So I was born in Israel. I served in Israel. I come from a very center right wing Israeli family, but I'm also the grandson of Holocaust survivors. And even I remember what my grandfather used to say. I view the Palestinians as victims of the victim. I think that encompasses a little bit of what Furious was saying. So as a Jewish person, I hear what you're saying, right? And I think I would add that, look, in times like this, nationalism and identity politics goes through the roof. And I do think some of that is playing out in these spaces, right? I tend to portray myself, and I think I am when not in a position of heightened nationalism, that I'm a relatively calm and objective person, right? Fierce is my friend in here. He's Palestinian. We have great conversation on and off Twitter. He knows where I stand on the conflict. I know where he stands on the conflict. But when something like this happens, there is a tendency for people to, unite under they will unite with their own collective and their people, regardless of the narrative that's being pushed. Now, for example, when the hospital bombing occurred, I tried to be a little bit objective. I kept the door open for it to be Israel. Some other Israelis didn't, without having the facts, the data. They said no, it just can't be Israel. And a lot of the Palestinians said no, it can't be Hamas. So I take what you say, but I don't think it's a unique scenario to this situation, right? When someone's nationalism is or national aspirations is under threat, immediately they're going to side with their own people, right? That is, there's nothing new. In terms of the protests that are going on, so although I was born and served in Israel, I was also educated in the West, including well, I don't want to brag, but it was an Ivy League law school. And within the West, the higher level of education, the Ivy League schools, they tend to be more of the liberal persuasion. And certainly in the industry, right? The higher education you obtain, normally the more liberal you become. I think that's a safe metric to go by. So I get it, right? I probably don't agree with 99% of people in this room. Um, but I can at least try to put myself in their shoes. Do I believe that Ahmed down there or Firas there, do I believe that they truly think or have any real belief that Israel is going to be destroyed? No. They know better, right? Israel's not going anywhere. They know that. But does the fact that if they chant from the river to the sea, which of course means getting rid of the Jews, it does. Do I think that they actually believe that? No. Do I fault them for chanting that slogan? No. Do I fault the people for protesting in the streets? No, because they don't live there. They've never lived there. And liberal societies and cities institutions always have a tendency to support what they view as the underdog without having a firm understanding of history. I get it. I might not like it, but I get it. So I have so much respect for you, and then Jew to Jew, I agree with a lot of what you say, but I can't fault anyone for becoming hyperactive when something like this happens. And I do think that this space is a really good outlet, right? We have different points of view, um, and that's pretty much it. But just as I said, Firas and Ahmed down there, they're going to go into hyper nationalism. They're going to become more hardline when something like this happens because it's human nature. You want to support your cause, your people, and so forth. But just as I know they don't believe that Israel's actually going to go anywhere, we have to be honest with ourselves. On the other side of the fence, the Palestinians aren't going to go anywhere either. And if there is a God, this is not the way he meant it to be. Okay, we can point the fingers and the blame game over and, oh, you did this, you did that, you did this, but we're going to end up with the same topography, the same demography, the same problems on the table, and it's going to open the door for this to eventually become like Kosovo or Belfast. But I personally can't fault anyone for supporting, even though I might not agree with it, something which is bred into the genes of everyone in this room. Thank you.